Hey everyone, it's Kristen, and I thought I would do a little video on how to choose a Hay House Oracle deck. So this really started, I've been getting some questions recently about Oracle cards and what Oracle cards to use for two of my classes. One is called How to Read Oracle Cards, and the other one is How to Give Epic Past Life Readings. And we use playing cards, tarot, and Oracle cards in that class. And I'm often asked, well, what kind of Oracle deck, or, would this be a good Oracle deck to use for that particular class? And then I've also been getting questions about like what Oracle decks are good for beginners. So in one of my comments, I said, I think Hay House has some great Oracle decks for beginners. So I just thought I'll just make the whole video about the Hay House decks because I think it's easy enough for you to choose from Hay House a deck that you could use for yourself as a beginner tool. Or finding a deck that you could use for my past life readings class, or for whatever kind of purpose you want to use your Oracle deck. And that's really what I want to talk about is how do you choose one? And I know that a lot of people just get a deck, any deck that they like, that they see, and they try to do all kinds of readings with it. In my personal opinion, the deck has to fit the context. So if I'm asked a question or I'm about to do a reading, I need to know what that is first before I choose my deck. I don't use the same deck for all readings. I use different types of decks. I read playing cards, I read tarot, I read fortune telling decks, I read oracle cards. So it depends on what the question is. It depends on what type of reading I'm giving. It depends on a lot of different factors, and that determines what deck I choose. Oracle cards are really great because they're straight to the point. The Oracle cards that we see today are very simple. There's a picture and a keyword and maybe a phrase or some words on the card. They're, in a way, to me, they're like a dumbed down version of divination. And I think that there's some benefit to having that. First of all, if you're a beginner and all of divination is just new to you, but also I use oracle cards as a summary to some of my readings. Sometimes I'll do playing card readings, tarot readings, and I need a kind of a quick, light, um, ending or summary. Sometimes there is a specific message that you can tell that your client is not understanding. And sometimes there are oracle decks that aren't so light. I mean, they come across light, but they're giving you a very kick in the pants kind of message, which I like, that is kind of wrapped up in a nice, neat bow that you can share with your clients. So I just think that they're really helpful, and I think it's good to learn how to use them and how to read them in different ways. The main thing that you want to ask in terms of choosing a deck is what questions can your oracle deck help you answer? And the more questions it can help you answer, the more well-rounded that deck is. I have not seen too many oracle decks that, to me, can answer all the questions. And all the questions for me are who, what, when, where, why, and how. Those are 6 questions. But if you think about all the different questions that you've heard or that people come up with in terms of using, starting with those words, that is a lot of questions. So that's how I kind of test my decks. I choose decks, for different reasons, different purposes, but I really like to run through in my head those questions before I'm really settling on a deck. And I can figure out, okay, this is going to be a deck that's going to be great for answering why questions, or this is a deck for answering how questions. So that's how I look at all decks, really, not just oracle decks. Tarot, this works really well for tarot as well. So I just want to kind of run through how I see a lot of these different Hay House decks based on those questions, and like how I would group them. And like I said, it's the things that I'm looking at, because I really do kind of run through this. And I think it's good for you to find the deck on YouTube, like find somebody who's done a flip through of it so you can see the cards and you can just kind of run through some of these questions. What kind of questions do you want to answer? You know, what kinds of, are you doing readings for other people? What kind of questions are they asking you? Um, Based on what you see, can you answer those questions? So it's not, for me, it's always about the oracle and not necessarily about the art. So I'm really just looking for a deck that can help me with that. So I'm going to show you some of the decks that I have and how I would kind of categorize them, and what kinds of questions I use them for. So the first thing I want to go through is who, what, when, and where. To me, those are, I put them in one group. To me, those are more predictive types of questions, like what's happening, um, who will I go on this blind date with, um, where will I meet my soulmate, when when will I meet my soulmate, even questions like where did I lose my keys. So I think it's good to come up with those questions, like, and ask yourself, can I answer these questions with this deck? Now, in terms of Hay House, and I'm talking specifically about their oracle decks, not tarot, not the ones that they have labeled tarot, which aren't really tarot decks. The ones that they have don't have 78 cards. To me, that's not really a tarot deck. But anyway, there's a new one that I just got, the Quantum Oracle, Sandra Ann Taylor. To me, she creates more predictive based decks. And in this one, the Quantum Oracle, they're different suits for different things. So there's, like, for example, a people suit. So that great for answering like a who question, would be a friend or colleague or a teacher. Um, you might also think about like what's happening. A new beginning is happening. So there's lots of cards that show events, like travel. Where questions can also be like what arena of life, will this happen in the financial arena, in the romantic arena, in travel arena, things like that. So to me, this is a really, really great deck as an oracle deck that I would use maybe more predictively for predictive types of questions. And again, thinking of who, what, when, where questions specifically. And I also find that the wisdom of the oracle deck is kind of the same. I would use this kind of in the same way for answering those types of questions. I feel like it can stretch to answer those types of questions. So that's who, what, when, where. I want to go to how, because to me, that is really where oracle cards shine with answering how questions or guidance questions. That's just a quick way to explain it. Guidance, actions. How questions require action, like how do I do something or how do I achieve this? You're looking for actions, verbs. And so whereas who, what, when, where is more people, places, things, the guidance decks are going to be showing you verbs or actions. And like I said, to me, this is really where oracle cards shine. To me, it's a lot easier to find a guidance-based deck. So I'm going to show you a couple of them and what I'm talking about. Crazy Sexy Love Notes. And this is a deck. I'll show you some of the cards. Ask for help. Tell the truth. So you can hear these are verbs. These are all start with verbs. They're all actions. They're phrases. Well, this one isn't one. Unplug. This is just one word, but most of these are phrases, but they're action oriented. Reconsider your commitments. Pause. And these, just so that you know, have writing on the back. So the first two that I showed you did not. These have like more of a explanation on the back. I am not a fan of decks with excessive writing. I really am not. But for a lot of people, that's very helpful because you don't want to have to fumble with the guidebook or go and look everything up. So it's all, everything that you need to know is right here on the card. Let's see, other decks that I think are very similar. They're going to give you more of a guidance response. The answer is simple. Oracle cards. I'm not going to show you all the cards from these. Like I said, you all can Google them. Cheryl Richardson's self-care cards. And you can find some flip throughs on these. The Wisdom for Healing cards. And these two in particular feel very self-care oriented. Of course, this one says self-care, but certain decks you might be looking for more in terms of the guidance that is more self-care, and certain decks you might be looking for in terms of something else. This is one that I really love. I love the images and just the whole feeling of this deck. The Angels and Ancestors Oracle cards. And I'm going to show you some of these. Again, these are written as the keyword phrase is written as guidance. Move beyond ancestral patterns. To me, this is more, there's kind of mundane guidance, and I think that's important to know too, that depending on what who you're reading for, if you want to read for yourself, I think it's good to have both mundane kind of guidance or insight as well as spiritual or less mundane. So take charge with authority, and that way you can kind of apply it to any situation. Wait for important information. Stay rooted and grounded. Unlock the magic within. So this deck has more, like, for example, when you read Unlock the Magic Within, if you're giving this type of message to like somebody in the public, I would say there's a difference between the woo-woo community and the public. The public may not know what magic is or how to unlock it. So sometimes there's spiritual lingo that you may have to translate for someone else, or maybe for yourself if you're just not familiar with a lot of these terms. But to me, this particular deck is good with guidance kind of on both those sides, the mundane and more spiritual. So those are the decks that I look at as guidance. Oh, wait, I have one more. This is probably one of my favorite decks, just not just Oracle cards, but just decks. And I use it a lot for readings that I do for the public, where you have to sometimes be very direct and frank with people. And these cards kind of help me to do that. Sometimes there's like a message that you need to get across that maybe you're just not sure of how to do it or say it. I love the Power of Surrender cards. They're still guidance, but to me, this is a kick in the pants deck. That's the way that I look at it. What I really like to see is a deck that has cards that I call both light and shadow. Shadow stuff is often the stuff that we don't want to see or that we're in denial about. And so just to show you a couple of these cards, surrender your fear of change. And so with this deck, to be honest, I never look at the picture. It doesn't mean anything to me. I look at the main header, and then I read what it says at the bottom. And sometimes, like I said, this is a great summary to pull a reading together that may be more of a difficult reading. But surrendering your fear of change, that's very powerful, that someone may not realize that they have a fear of change. Here's another one: surrender defensiveness. Hey, you're being really defensive, stop it. So it's kind of like a nice way to say something that's not really, it's not that it's not nice, it's something that's very helpful, but sometimes it's stuff that people don't really see. They don't see their stuff. And then other cards like surrender to rest and sleep, it's the saying you need to rest, you need to get more sleep. And also surrender to wonder and awe. So this deck to me covers a wide variety of things that you might need to surrender to and basically like release or embrace in your life. And so it's very straight to the point. And like I said, every time that I use this a lot. It's like, yes, this is the message that this is a great summary so that the person will be able to pull all the pieces of information together that I'm trying to share with them in one little important nugget. So those are the guidance decks. And I want to share another kind of guidance, but to me, this is guidance that is in the form of affirmations. I don't particularly like affirmation decks, so I only have, I think, 2 of them, but these 2 I really love. And so affirmations can also tell you how to do something, but they're more like giving you the affirmation itself is the how. Like you could repeat the affirmation. It's going to affirm something positive about you and your life. And you will know these decks because they will usually have I in them and they'll be phrases. So for example, this is the How to Love Yourself cards deck. And you can see it says a deck of 64 affirmations. Here's one of them. I am good enough. So one thing that you can do is use this as an actual affirmation. You could put this up, somewhere you're going to see it every day. And every time you walk by it, you can say that affirmation. So I think those are, really great. Here's another one. I choose a bright future now. What I really love about these cards is that they have another affirmation on the back. So it's kind of like you're not wasting any space with this deck. And another deck that I consider more like affirmations or even inspirational, I kind of put these into inspirational category for decks, is the Universe Has Your Back Oracle deck. And this one has cards like, when I lean toward love, I am led. So again, this is really the same. It's really an affirmation. It's kind of like affirming some aspect of your life, to use something positive that you can remember, write down, add to your journal. I recognize that I have chosen fear and I choose again. I choose love. Okay. And this one says, my fearless freedom lights up the world. And so I think, like I said, this deck can also be used more as affirmations or helping you with like guidance, but more of an affirmational perspective, whether you use this and say these phrases or just use them to kind of inspire you. So that would be how, and I saved why for last because I do find that people don't often ask why questions, or I'll say the public doesn't typically ask why questions. Why to me is a question that's about getting deeper or understanding an issue from a different level. Like I understand that my funds are low, but I don't know why they're low. Like I'm doing everything right. Why is this happening? That's the way that I think about the question why. And so for me, it's a question that people ask when they want more depth, when they want to understand something on more of a spiritual level. They want to understand why this pattern keeps repeating. Why does this keep happening? What's the overarching view like of their life? And so there are several decks that I have that I think are great for that. They're not so much great for answering more mundane questions, but they're better for answering more spiritual questions or helping people to understand like what's really going on in their life, like what phase are they in, what spirit guides are helping them with right now. So um, there's a deck called Ask Your Guides. And this is a deck that's what it's about. All the cards kind of relate to different guides, spirit guides, and what they're helping you with. So if you pick this card, it's about decisions. You're learning about decisions. So these decks help you kind of understand, I think, lessons in your life. And again, with any spiritual matters, as opposed to mundane things, it's also important to understand the lingo. So there's a lot of decks to me that use certain words and terms that you may or may not really understand. So to me, these decks would be more for people who kind of understand different terms, like or are familiar with, for example, Archangel Michael. Or familiar with nature spirits and their purpose. I think that would be helpful. And then also there's the guidebook. Again, I'm a firm believer in reading the guidebook. So that's going to help you to understand, what these cards are about. In this case, you would be learning about loss. So the why is you're learning lessons about loss, and your healer guides are helping you with that lesson. So let me show you, let's see, there's one other one that's actually a newer deck that to me fits in that same category. And this is the Sacred Destiny Oracle. And I think this is a great deck for understanding like phases. I think it's really helpful to help people understand that everything is flow. Everything's like an ebb and a flow. Sometimes you're at the ebb, sometimes you're at the flow. So it's important to know what phases you're in, like what lessons you're learning about how you're evolving, where you are. This kind of is a where question, but it's like a bigger spiritual where question. So maybe you're in a phase of transformation, and that's why there's so many things changing in your life. Or maybe you're in a phase of release, and that's why things are moving out of your life. Maybe you're in a phase of power or standstill. Or maybe you are healing chaos. So I really like this deck. It's the images are really pretty. It's all based on landscapes, so there aren't a lot of people in this particular deck. But I use it more for understanding kind of like what are the overarching themes or phases that you're in right now to help you understand why you're experiencing something. And so there's a couple other decks that I would put into that category that I have. Let's see, I think I have two more. That is Native Spirit Oracle cards. To me, has that same spiritual vibe in terms of like understanding why and themes and going on in your life. And then especially this one, the Work Your Light Oracle. And again, this one uses, to me, a lot of spiritual lingo. So, you want to know what cord cutting and soul retrieval and, these types of terms mean, because I think you're going to have a better understanding of this deck and these cards when they show up for you. I think that that's it. Now I want to go through for my class how to read oracle cards. You can choose any of these decks, because in the class I'm going to talk to you about how to read in different ways, how to do predictive readings, guidance readings, self-discovery readings, and really how to choose your, we're going to talk also about how to choose your deck, but how to use, like if you only have one deck and you need to read and answer all these questions, just some different ways that you'll be able to do that. So pick a deck that you like, but also think about what you want to answer, what kinds of questions that you want to answer. But for my class, how to read oracle cards, you can pick whatever deck that you like, and I will show you how to read that deck. For how to give epic past life readings, in that class, as I said, we use playing cards, tarot, and oracle cards. And we use oracle cards at the end to help understand the soul like review. Like it's not about understanding the details of the life. It's about looking from the soul's perspective on that lifetime and what would the soul have to say. So it's really, to me, you want a deck that is mostly light, meaning that it's not like a light and shadow kind of balance. It's mostly light. It's inspirational, positive messages. It doesn't have to be guidance, but any of these kind of spirit, like I said, these spiritual kind of decks, I think would work really well for that class. Ask your guides, native spirit. But almost any deck would work. I also really like The Universe Has Your Back. But yeah, I mean, you could really technically use any deck, but if you want to know what would be best, because we're using that just from a soul view of the life, you really want it to be a deck that's going to give you less of a mundane look and more of a higher spiritual, higher self kind of perspective. So I hope that answers all the questions now and gives you some insight on how to choose cards, maybe not just from Hay House, but from anywhere. I think Hay House is always a good place to start, though, just in terms of the decks that they put out. To me, are really great for beginners, people who are just getting started with divination tools, and oracle cards. So there is a lot of variety, but you have to again ask yourself, what questions are you trying to answer? And you can always ask me a question, because I have quite a few of these decks. I don't know how many I showed you, maybe 13. But I have quite a few of the Hay House selections. Usually when they go on sale, that's when I pick up some new decks. So I probably have some opinion on, a deck, and I may be familiar with it. So you can always ask me. Thanks for watching.